What I'm going to do now is combine several of these rounding to the nearest ideas together. So I'm going to start with 157.83 and I'm going to round it to the nearest 10. Sorry, to the nearest 100. So I'm going to put to the nearest 100. So I'm going to look at my hundreds column, which is here, and my starter number is 100. My next 100, because I'm counting up in hundreds, would be 200, and my midpoint is going to be 150. Well, my value is 157.83, so it's on this side, so it's actually closer to 200. So to the nearest 100, it's going to be 200. So basically what I'm doing is taking this complicated number and just simplifying it. It's like somebody saying, how many people are there in the crowd? And rather than saying, oh, there's 193, saying nearly 200. It's a number that you can work with to make your life easier. Okay, now what if we were doing to the nearest 10? So I'm going to look at my tens column, which is 5. So it's going to be either 150. Remember, I'm not just writing 50 because I've got more than 50 here. It's to the nearest 10 is 150 because that's this. If I stopped at the 5, you'd get 150, so it's 150. And my other one, if I'm counting up in tens, is 160. The midpoint of that is 155. That's halfway between each of them. And my number is 157.83. So again, that's larger than the midpoint. So it's going to sit this side. So to the nearest 10, it's actually 160. Okay, to the nearest whole number, notice I haven't said to the nearest unit. Technically, we say that's to the nearest whole number. So we have 157, because we're looking at this column, or if we're counting up in whole numbers, we're counting up in ones to 158. We have midpoint, first, it's 157.5, and our number ends in 83. So this is 2 decimals on the end. To help myself, I'm going to write an extra 0 here because 157.5 is exactly the same as 157.50. Just the 0 just allows me to compare this as if it's 50 and this as if it's 83. So my number is going to be 157.83. So again, it's this side. So to the nearest whole number is 158. Okay. The one that always catches people out as well is to the nearest 10th, or maybe 100th, anything that's a fraction. So to the nearest 10th, notice that I've got a th on the end. Every time you hear that sound, th, that means that a unit's been split into into 10 pieces. So let's look at my tenths column. So this is my tenths column here. My 3 is in my hundredths column. So my number is going to be 157.8 as my starting point. And if I'm counting up in tenths, that means that this number is going to get 1 larger. So I end up with 157.9. Halfway between these is 157.85. So 157.85. And our number is 157.83. Now that is this side of the midpoint, midline. So actually, to the nearest tenth, in this case, we're going to round down to 157.8. I'm just going to put a circle around that because it starts to look a bit messy. And that's it. Basically, the rule is, look at the column of the number you're meant to be checking it with or rounding it by. The number that you already have is your minimum. The only thing you can do then is round up. So you either stick to the number you already have or you round up. Find the midpoint between your stick number and your round up number, and then see which side of the midline or the midpoint line your number falls into, and that's going to be your nearest number.